Hey guys, what's up? Dan here again with a lesson on how to structure your diet. So this is the before last lesson in the nutrition section. We're going to leave out a few little things in terms of nutrient timing and supplements because to be honest, like if you have a fairly balanced diet and you're just focusing on the bottom structure of this pyramid, which I'm about to go through, like you'll be fine. Okay. Sometimes I think we try to chase things too much and we spend too much money on supplements, and we try to make sure that all of our timings are perfect and everything. Honestly, just focus on the basics. The basics work the best, right? Doesn't matter how many times you hear somebody come up with something new. It's always the same principles: calories in versus calories out. And yes, you can optimize things, but for most of us, we're not pro athletes, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's dive straight into it. And let's talk about the first thing being the pyramid of nutrition. Okay, so it's important to know that we always have to start from the bottom. Like I said, too many of us spend time worrying about supplements and nutrient timing. Okay, when the biggest issues most of us have is our behaviors and our lifestyle. Right? If you're going out and you're getting shit-faced every single weekend, then you can't be expecting to have very great results or very good accuracy, I should say, when it comes to your diet, right? Because if you're not tracking your calories, you don't have a good understanding of how many calories are coming in versus what's going out, then how can you ever expect to get super shredded or lose 20, 30 pounds, right? So again, this all comes down to your lifestyle and your behavior. And it goes back to what we talk about in the goal setting modules and in the self-awareness modules, and even at the very beginning, which is what type of person do you want to become? Who do you want to be? Right? And once you've identified that, we need to reverse engineer it. What kind of things would that person do? What would be, a consistent day in that person's life, from the choices they make to the food they eat to, how much sleep they get, all the rest, right? And I'm not saying you can't have flexibility, because I still have beer, I still eat chocolate and all the rest, and I'm actually still losing weight, and I'm actually probably the most shredded I've ever been, and all I've been doing is focus on my calories in versus calories out and my protein intake and water. Okay. And again, these will be certain things that I talk about in a second, but ultimately behavior and lifestyle is going to be a massive factor. So then we look at energy balance. So we've talked about this in the past, calories in versus calories out. If you want to be in a surplus, a deficit, or at maintenance. Macronutrients, this is basically your proteins, your carbs, your fats, and you can even fit in alcohol in there if you want to, but we've already talked about that in the previous lesson. Micronutrients is your vitamins and your minerals. The big thing here, guys, is I would personally just take a multivitamin every day. Doesn't matter if you aren't losing weight or if you're trying to put weight on, if you're trying to maintain your weight. Most of us are deficient, especially in the UK, in vitamin D because we don't get much sun, with the exception of the last 2-3 months. It's been fantastic. But most of us need vitamin D. Most of us are probably deficient in things like magnesium, zinc, or other metals. And, you might have your own deficiencies because of your diet, okay? So I'd recommend taking something like that. And there's also some really good evidence to showcase that vitamin D could be quite beneficial in terms of combating coronavirus. And these are studies that are coming out of the States. So I'd potentially just take that anyways. Nutrient timing, again, it's not a massive thing to focus on. A lot of people, I think, take protein shakes before or after or both. And that's, it's going to help. But if you're already eating protein throughout the day, then you'll be fine, right? A lot of these studies that kind of showcase the importance of protein powder around your workouts tend to be done on fasted individuals, meaning they haven't ate food all day. And that's just not how life works. Like if you're eating protein on all your meals throughout, every day of the week, well, you're always having protein in your bloodstream and just being digested. It takes a while for your protein to be digested as well. And then supplements, again, we'll have a quick little module on these two last sections, I guess. Okay. Maybe even micronutrients. So first thing we need to do is identify, do we want to lose weight, maintain weight, or gain weight, right? So calorie deficit, maintenance, or calorie surplus. Once we've identified that, then we just want to calculate our calories. So again, you've got the template, you've used that, so you're going to plug in your number here, right? So I put in my number. So that's all in there. Super easy, 86.9. And then next thing you know, you put in your activity level based on kind of what I talked about in the previous lesson. So you're going to pick the one relevant to you. So for me, I've been using 1.36. It's been working well because I'm losing weight on the calories that I'm aiming for. So my total daily energy expenditure is 2,700. That's for me to maintain my weight. If I want to lose weight, I should aim for about 23 to 2,400. If I want to gain muscle, I probably want to be around 28, 2,900, maybe even 3,000. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. We've talked about that before. Then we need to structure in our recommended diet breaks. Now, this is important. If you're somebody who's at maintenance, so if you're at maintenance or you're trying to gain muscle, okay, I personally, right, would tell you don't worry about diet breaks. Like, what are you taking a break from? You're just eating as normal. So you don't need one. The only people that really need a diet break are the people that are trying to drop fat. All right. And the reason we need to do that is because of what we talked about previously, metabolic adaptation, right? Which makes your body more resistant at losing weight. Okay, so what we need to do is find out when to put in diet breaks. So how many weeks do you want to be in a diet break for? I'd recommend 1 to 4 weeks in a deficit before having a week off. And again, this is where it massively varies per person. If you only want to diet for 1 to 2 weeks, and then you want to take 1 to 2 weeks off and go back up to maintenance, that's completely up to you. This is the beauty of diet breaks and structuring your own stuff, right? If 1 week you're just not feeling it, you feel really stressed out and you feel like you got a whole bunch of stuff happening at work, or, you know, you're just not feeling it in the gym either, and you just want to give your body a break, then take a diet break, right? Mentally, it's going to be easier. Physically, it's going to be easier. So as an example, if I start on the 1st of June, for 3 weeks, I'll be aiming to eat 23 to 2,400 calories. So again, based on my numbers above. And on week 4, I'll be eating at maintenance at around 26 to 2,700 calories. Again, based on my numbers above, which is my diet break period, right? And this is going to be dependent also on weight loss throughout that month. So what does that mean? It just means that obviously if I start at 86.9 and by week 4, I drop to 84.9, well, that's going to affect my numbers down here a bit. So it might just mean that my maintenance, instead of 26 to 2,700 calories, might be 2,500, 2,400 calories. Does that make sense? So what I'd recommend is you actually structure your diet yourself if you're not working with Reese and I directly, because that's what we do for our clients anyways. And then obviously we adjust it more accordingly to their lifestyles, and we look at all these different things. We look at all the data, and then we make more informed decisions. All right. So you can still do that yourself. It's going to take a bit more time. So I'll leave that up to you. But once that's basically all done, you can put that in your diary, you can put that in your Google Calendar, and literally just structure your weeks, right? In your Google Calendar, you could literally have every single day saying maintenance, 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 and then, you know, on the 1st of June, you start diets, right? You start your diet and you say, I'm in a deficit, right? Pretty straightforward. At least that way, you know exactly when you're in a deficit and when you're at maintenance, all right? So a few things to consider, or a few things to remember. There's no good or bad foods. Like, apologies for my language here, but that's just bullshit. Like, there's no good or bad foods, okay? Stop labeling foods that way. There's more nutritious foods compared to others. Like, if I eat, again, a croissant versus eating an apple, I'm going to get more nutrients and vitamins and everything out of that apple than a croissant. Doesn't mean the croissant is bad. If anything, I love the croissant. I'm always going to eat it, right? Just like chocolate and beer and chips and crisps, or whatever you like to call them. Like, if these foods are foods you enjoy, I would highly advise against just cutting them out of your diet. But there's always exceptions. Like, if you find yourself always reaching for it and you can't seem to break that habit, well, one really good way of breaking a habit is by changing your environment, which is obviously what we talk about in the habit section. And it might just be that you just have to remove that because you don't have the self-control. And a really good example of this is my housemate. Like, we're very different when it comes to our diets right now. Like, we're both dieting, but she finds it very difficult to be flexible and have maybe certain foods more so than I am. Whereas for me, I can, you know, have more self-control when it comes to just, you know, eating a little bit of chocolate or eating some chips or doing this or doing that. Whereas maybe sometimes for her, when she does that, she feels like everything goes out the window and then she just kind of binges, or she's just like, I don't need to track my calories for the day, right? So everyone's different. So just keep that in mind, but there is no such thing as good or bad foods, right? Again, everyone is completely different when it comes to their habits, their behaviors, and ultimately you'll understand how to break these and how to change these once you go through the habit section. Some food is simply more nutritious. That's what I need to change, nutritious, compared to others. The other thing we also need to take into account is protein intake is more important during weight loss compared to weight gain. What do I mean by that? Well, we've talked about it in the metabolic adaptation lesson, is that we want to up our protein when we're trying to lose weight because that's going to help us maintain our lean mass and our muscle mass, right? And that's one thing we always try to do is as we're losing weight, we always want to make it fairly slow because the more aggressive you go, the more likely you are to lose muscle mass and lean mass. So protein needs to be up, right? So resistance training and protein intake needs to be higher. When you're trying to put weight on, it doesn't mean you're not going to eat that much protein. It just means it doesn't really need to be in excess as it would be in a weight loss period, all right? Tracking methods such as MyFitnessPal or Precision Nutrition or Mindful Eating self-care practice will most likely need to be used at some point in time. What I mean by that is, again, and I've put all of them in the notes below this video, is you'll get to a certain point where just altering kind of portion sizes, like, eyeballing things and not really tracking will only get you so far. And I'm not saying you can't lose weight and you can't put weight on, but there's also kind of a certain level to things, right? If I'm trying to put weight on because I'm trying to build muscle mass, I don't really want to be in a calorie surplus of 5, 6, 700 calories, because that's quite a bit. It also means I'm going to pack on more fat, which is going to mean when I'm trying to lose weight again, to get shredded because I'm trying to, compete or just look better and feel good when I go on holiday. Well, that's more work I now have to do because I just overindulged in my surplus. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying if you're really kind of meticulous about your phases, you just need to be aware that you're probably going to have to track at some point, or at least like track every now and then so you have a good understanding of your portion sizes. The other thing too is when you lose weight at a certain point, like, it's going to be important for us to, again, use these tools to understand where you are. I'm not saying you have to use it every day because some people get really obsessive with these. And that's the last thing we're trying to do, because we understand that mental health matters. And again, this is where everyone's completely different. Like, I track my food every day at the moment and I enjoy it. Like, I'm not finding it a chore. If anything, it's making me more self-aware of my choices and the food I eat. Whereas I know for somebody else, they would get really obsessive and they wouldn't enjoy it. Okay. So it might just be that every few weeks you have to track for 3-4 days so you have a really good understanding of the food you eat, because most of us eat the same things. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense, because like I said, depending on your goal, at some point we need to use these tools. It's like anything else. The higher your overall body fat percentage, the more I'd recommend you focus on protein intake, hydration levels, stress levels, overall calories, and being more active, right? And again, that might sound like a lot, but all I'm trying to say is if I am overweight or obese, okay, then at the moment, your primary objective for me as your coach would be, okay, I just want you to focus on protein intake, right? So try to have maybe two out of your 3 meals every day have some form of protein. So like eggs, fish, vegetarian, vegan options, whatever that might be, right? I then want you to just try to drink a bit more water. Okay, so again, it might be that we just focus on those 2 things for a week and we just keep adding on as time goes on. Then stress levels, we might look at that because stress is going to impact water retention at times. Then we're also going to look at your overall calories, because again, I don't want you to focus about your carbs and your fats. I want you to enjoy the food you're eating right now, and I just want you to eat more protein. And if we do that while being more physically active, I guarantee you're going to see some change, right? Either in body composition because we have a well-structured training program, or in your weight loss because you're moving more, basically. And you're probably still making better choices because protein is keeping you more satiated, right? So if you are one of those people at the moment which are overweight or obese, right, which is completely fine, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but naturally you're probably trying to shift some weight. This is what I would want you to focus on. If you're someone who's leaner, then depending on where you are in terms of like your current journey with your weight loss, then you're probably going to have to be a bit more specific and more accurate, right? And this always comes back to, and I forgot to write it, which is flexibility versus accuracy. All right. And I've talked about this a few times, accuracy. I've talked about this a few times already in other videos, I believe. But basically the idea is if you want to have a very flexible diet, you can't expect to have 100% accuracy, right? There needs to be a give and take, just like your calories in and your calories out. If you want to be very lean and you want to be shredded, well, your accuracy is going to have to be a hell of a lot higher than your flexibility. It doesn't mean you can't eat chocolate, you can't eat chips, you can't have beer and all the rest, but you're probably going to have a lot less of it than you would if you were eating 3, 4, 5,000 calories, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, the last considerations, and this is just for your reference, and this is going to be attached at the bottom as well, this whole document, is in terms of if you really wanted to kind of focus on numbers, because like I said, some people like to and some people don't like to, all I would recommend you do is focus on this protein intake at the moment for either your weight gain or your weight loss. If you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to aim for this number, so 2.2 to 2.6 grams per kilo. So just to put that in perspective, for my weight, right, so let's just multiply it by 2, I'm looking at about 160 to 190 grams of protein, which is quite a bit of protein. That's if I'm losing weight, because I'm trying to maintain my mass. And then if I'm trying to gain weight, you see how that number drops by almost a gram, if not more. But again, I just focus on about, 1.6, right? If I'm trying to gain. And then if you wanted to, you could focus on your fats and your carbohydrate intake. But like I said, if you're somebody who's just trying to lose weight at the moment, I would just get you to focus on this part here, which is just focusing on moving more, eating more protein, hydration levels, stress levels, and overall calories. So like I said, this is how you would go about structuring your whole routine. And if you have any questions, or sorry, not your routine, but your diet, if you have any questions, just drop us a comment, email us, and we'll happily help you out. Hope that helps, guys. See you in a bit.